Priscilla Presley is not and never was the fragile, demure child woman she has come to personify. She is, in a word, a survivor, a woman of indomitable will and almost frightening determination. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Priscilla Presley Child Bride book read series by Suzanne Finstead. The following episode is a redo of an original episode that I published a month ago. This is a recap of the prologue of the book and chapter 1. This is less book read, more commentary. In keeping with copyright guidelines, I have decided to not read Child Bride word for word. I don't want to get into any problems with the channel. I will read the most poignant and powerful parts of each chapter and then give you my commentary. It's still going to be a fantastic series. So episodes 1 to 7 that are going to be coming up, again, are recaps of everything that I released before. If you've watched any of those episodes before, and you want to support my channel, and given the fact that I had to take down all of those previous published videos and I lost all the views, all the comments, all the likes, if you could watch this one from beginning to end, I would so appreciate it. So thank you so much, and let's get into the book. Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm Jennifer, so happy to have you here for chapter 1 of Child Bride, the untold story of Priscilla Presley, written by Suzanne Finstead. Now, this is actually the third video that I've made about Priscilla Presley. If you have not caught part 1 and 2 of the videos that I made about Priscilla, the first one is titled Who is the Real Priscilla Presley? And the second is The Origin of Priscilla Presley. These are going to get you up to speed before you dive into the book. So I would really encourage you to go back and watch those 2 videos, because in those videos, the first one is important because I basically get you caught up to everything that's been said and everything that's been going on out there in the media regarding Priscilla these last few years, because there's been a lot. There is a really awful lawsuit that Priscilla is currently, as of this recording, embroiled in. It involves 2 of her former business associates, and they are really hurling some awful claims against Priscilla in this lawsuit. One of which is saying that she prematurely pulled the plug on her daughter, Lisa Marie Presley, who unfortunately passed away in January of 2023. They're saying that she pulled the plug in order to gain leverage and control over the entire Graceland Trust, which at the time of Lisa's death belonged to her daughter, Riley Keough. So I go into all of that. But this episode is going to be chapter 1 of Child Bride. And in part 2, the origin of Priscilla Presley, I go into a preview of a particularly juicy chapter in this book that directly challenges this legend almost that Priscilla has been crafting in the media and in the culture for going on 5 decades now about who she is. And also in that video, I talk about how back in 2013, I read this book, and it basically shattered my image of who I thought Priscilla Presley was. Everything that Suzanne writes about in this book flew in the face of what I thought I knew about Priscilla Presley. And if you watch parts 1 and 2, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Because if you believe what Suzanne Finstead writes in this painstakingly researched book, it's basically mind-blowing. And as a lifelong Elvis fan, I thought I knew Priscilla as always this sweet, shy, demure, innocent, 14-year-old who met Elvis, fell hopelessly in love with him, and really wanted nothing from him other than to love him and have him love her. And she was just, wanting this perfect relationship and marriage. This book just flies in the face of all of that. And every part of it is good. I'm going to read you the back cover because every part of this book is awesome. Even the back cover, okay, is the myth-shattering account of the most famous and most taboo love story in rock and roll history. Child Bride reveals the hidden story of rock icon Elvis Presley's love affair with 14-year-old Priscilla Presley, the ninth grader he wooed as a GI in Germany and cloistered at Graceland before marrying her to fulfill a promise to her starstruck parents. Now, keep that phrase in mind. Her starstruck parents, okay? Award-winning biographer Suzanne Funstead perceptively pieces together the clues from candid interviews with all of the Presley intimates, including Priscilla herself, along with hundreds of sources who have never before spoken publicly, to uncover the surprising truths behind the legend of Elvis and Priscilla, a tumultuous tale of sexual attraction and obsession, heartbreak and loss. Child Bride, the only biography of Priscilla Presley, unveils the controversial child woman who evolved from a lonely and sexual, precocious teenager kept by the king of rock and roll into a shrewd businesswoman in control of the multi-million-dollar Elvis Presley empire, a rags-to-riches saga of secrets and betrayals that began when Priscilla was only 3 years old. Now, when she says this is the only major biography of Priscilla Presley, she's absolutely right, even to this day. Now, this book was written in 1997, published in 1997, and today, in early 2026, there still is no major biography of Priscilla Presley, save the 2 books that she has written herself about her version of events of her life story and her love and marriage and relationship with Elvis. And she tells a very different story from what we will read in Child Bride. I can't wait to get you guys started on this, so let's get going. And of course, I've got my Elvis bookmark, y'all. This is his signature in front of the gates of Graceland. Yes, I'm a nerd, I'm fully aware. Okay, so I wanted to start with the author's note, because when I told you that every part of this book is good, every part of this book is good, okay? Author's note. I had no idea when I conceived of writing a biography of Priscilla Presley in the summer of 1995 that I would be opening a Pandora's box. This notorious child bride, the woman with whom millions of Elvis fans have had a love-hate relationship. As a teenager, she was cloistered at Graceland, trailed by whispers labeling her Elvis Presley's Lolita. Once married to Elvis, Priscilla regained her status as Hollywood's best-kept secret, virtually unrecognized apart from Elvis. What was the real reason the parents of a 9th grade girl permitted their daughter to date, then live with a rock star? What spell did Priscilla cast over Elvis that drew him to her, and what kept him attached? When Priscilla wrote her own memoir over a decade ago, it became an immediate publishing sensation. Yet the story still had not been told. Priscilla's autobiography revealed next to nothing about her life before or after Elvis and contained no recollections from anyone but Priscilla. My intention was to research and write a definitive biography of Priscilla Presley. I had no reason at the time to suspect that her book or the stories she told were anything other than true, merely incomplete. And I want to mention in part 1 of the 2 videos that I have already done about Priscilla Presley, I will link those in the description or somewhere at the end of this video. That was actually the biggest criticism that most critics gave to her second book that she released just this past fall in 2025. It was called Softly as I Leave You. The critics were basically saying that what type of polished narrative is this still? Like, this is a lot of rehashing of stuff that we've already heard her mention in her old book, or, she's spun ad nauseum over the different interviews that she's given and spun over the last few decades, that it seems like she's more intent on preserving a fiercely guarded narrative and she's holding everything still, even to this day, close, rather than just really open up and tell us who she is. So I thought that was interesting that this author is recognizing that even when reading her first book, Elvis and Me. And Elvis and Me was published in 1985. So, how many decades in between 85 and 2025 where that's what critics are saying? They're like, this is the same old. When are we going to get the real Priscilla, right? So that's where this book comes in, y'all. As I started on what would become 2 years of intensive research, clues began to surface, suggesting that the story Priscilla told of her life was not as it was. Priscilla Presley, I discovered, was a woman of many and profound secrets, beginning when she was a child of 3 and continuing ever after. Deep in the attic of her past was a closet door, behind which were skeletons unimagined. What I uncovered in part was that the legend of Elvis and Priscilla, rooted in Priscilla's memoirs and repeated as fact in countless Elvis biographies, was an elaborate fiction created by Priscilla as a result of a series of Byzantine, occasionally traumatic events leading up to her meeting with Elvis and continuing afterward. Priscilla Presley is not and never was the fragile, demure child woman she has come to personify. She is, in a word, a survivor, a woman of indomitable will and almost frightening determination. And we cover that in The Origin of Priscilla Presley. You get a little taste about how determined Priscilla Presley was to meet Elvis. And she was 14 at the time. Now, the story is tragic. You listen to the story, watch the video. It's the abuse of a child. Priscilla was 14 years old, and she was involved with a man who basically abused her in order to give her access to Elvis. And I go into that in that video. But point being, it's a completely different account when you compare it to what so many now see as a fiction. What Priscilla weaved, the story and image that she was trying to portray when she came into Elvis's world. And she would have us to believe that she tumbled into his world. It was almost like fate and happenstance. And we're going to see, as Suzanne, the author, lays out, that that was absolutely not the case according to the author, and that she was very determined along with her family. It says, in reconstructing her life, I retraced Priscilla's footsteps from birth in Brooklyn, New York, to childhood in Connecticut, Texas, Maine, New Mexico, Germany, and Memphis, even sleeping in the bedroom where she first stayed at the Vernon Presley house adjacent to Graceland in March of 1963. I scoured virtually every book available on the Presleys, which number in the hundreds, haunted libraries and flea markets in search of the seemingly infinite magazine articles about Elvis, Priscilla, or Lisa. I listened to Elvis Presley's music, watched his movies, screened documentaries, hunted for and scrutinized vintage photographs. I rented Priscilla Presley's pictures, pored through probate, divorce, and other civil court records and archives, immersed myself in Scientology literature, and interviewed close to 300 people, each of whom held various pieces of the puzzle that were Elvis and Priscilla. So this woman did her research. And when she's talking about immersing herself in Scientology literature, at the time, Priscilla and Lisa Marie Presley were both in the religion. I don't know if you can call it religion, but some people would call it a cult, in Scientology. So that's why she's saying that she immersed herself in Scientology literature, because she wanted to really get into the mindset of Priscilla, because Priscilla was involved with Scientology after Elvis had passed, and something tells me that he would not have wanted his daughter anywhere near that religion, but we'll get into that. As my research deepened, I noticed a parallel between one of Elvis's signature songs, the hauntingly beautiful Are You Lonesome Tonight, and his ultimately doomed relationship with Priscilla. Elvis recorded the song in the spring of 1960, shortly after he returned from Germany, where he had just met Priscilla Beaulieu. Many who knew Elvis felt the song personified him, for he harbored from birth a deep, inexplicable loneliness, something Priscilla as a child shared with him, part of what bonded them initially. So that's the author's note. And there is a little quote in between the author's note and part 1. And it's from L. Ron Hubbard, the founder of Scientology. And it says, "What is personal integrity? Personal integrity is knowing what you know. What you know is what you know. And to have the courage to know and say what you have observed. And that is integrity. And there is no other integrity." L. Ron Hubbard. Okay. The second quote says, "The truth shall set you free, man." And that's from Elvis Presley. What do you guys think of that L. Ron Hubbard quote? I mean, that to me is something that's like, make up whatever you're going to make up, stand by your truth, and then that's all you need. That's all you need to do. I read that quote and I'm like, that is exactly how Meghan Markle, in my humble opinion, lives her life. It's just make up your story, make up your truth, stand by it no matter what, fiercely guard that truth, and then that's all you need to do, and then just ignore the criticism because you are above reproach, and just stand by your story. It just seems like a whole lot of words to basically say, believe your own lies. And then Elvis's quote is just like more true than anything else. It's like, truth is going to set you free. So here we go. Chapter 1, Anne's story. In March of 1963, Priscilla Ann Beaulieu was at a crossroads of her life. Though just 17, a senior in high school, she was faced with a decision that she knew, with a child's wisdom, would forever alter the course of her destiny, and she had a strange foreboding. She was desperately in love, as only a teenager can be, a forbidden love, locked in conflict with her parents, especially her mother, Anne Beaulieu. Elvis Presley, the 28-year-old rock and roll idol and movie star, the most famous sex symbol in the world, held the 17-year-old in thrall and wanted her to move into his compound in Memphis as his girlfriend-in-waiting while she finished high school and came of age. But Elvis was not the object of Priscilla Beaulieu's teenage fancy that fateful spring. She was breathless over the handsome 18-year-old star of her high school football team. She did not want to leave her life in Germany for a dubious future with a rock star. It was Anne Beaulieu, her mother, who was obsessed with the idea of Priscilla moving to Graceland to become Elvis Presley's de facto child bride. Both mother and daughter feared that Priscilla might be making the greatest mistake of her life. Priscilla, if she went to Graceland, Anne, if she stayed. In the end, Priscilla deferred to her mother, as she habitually did. She packed her bags for Graceland with barely a goodbye to the boy she left behind. As this tale implies, it would be difficult to tell Priscilla's story without beginning with her mother's, Anna Lillian Iverson. As a child, she was called Rooney, short for Annie Rooney. The Iversons would not reveal to outsiders. They were Norwegians who considered the most trivial family detail to be personal and private. Now, keep that in mind. The way that her mother's family, and her mother, as she's raising and rearing Priscilla, the role of secrets in Priscilla's life and in the Beaulieu household. Anne's family history, they still maintain, is nobody else's business. Outside the family, and even to Anne, it is a forbidden topic. The year before Anna was born, Albert and Lorraine Iverson set up permanent residence in New London, Connecticut, a picturesque working-class town on the eastern seaboard. Rooney sang and acted in skits with her favorite cousin Margaret. Rooney was fair and blue-eyed, with a wholesome girl-next-door prettiness. Her most impressive feature was a thick tumble of shoulder-length blonde hair. She chafed under the thumb of her rigid policeman father, waiting until she was out the door to apply forbidden lipstick, using Margaret or her best friend Fay Haim as cover for the nighttime adventures of adolescent girls. Anna Iverson's turning point came when she sneaked out to attend a USO dance during her freshman year of high school. Girls under 16 were not admitted, and Rooney was barely 15. There was a slight stigma attached to high school girls who attended USO functions. Many of them got in trouble, as Faye would remember, which in 1940, 1930, 1950 speak is code for you got yourself pregnant out of wedlock. None of this deterred Rooney. She was in single-minded pursuit of romance, the kind depicted in the movies, the kind that promised an escape from her stagnant, lower-middle-class existence. One evening at the dawn of World War II, fate smiled on her. She was asked to dance by the handsomest soldier at the USO, a dark-haired dream of a boy named James Wagner, Jimmy to his friends. And he had a million of them, recalled his brother Gene. Jimmy was a storekeeper, third class in the Navy, birthed in New London. It was certainly love right from the beginning, according to Rooney's best friend, Faye. He was gorgeous, remembered Anna's cousin Margaret, swooning. James Wagner was slight, 5 feet 6 or 7, with an athlete's physique and a face that would melt a girl's heart. model perfect features, dancing blue-green eyes, movie star white teeth, and jet black hair that formed a widow's peak. "Oh," his mother once exclaimed, "if you see his picture, it'll take your breath away." But he was not conceited, according to his brother Gene. Jimmy wasn't like that. He didn't act like he knew he was handsome. Anna Iverson concealed her romance from her parents, calling on Faye or Margaret to act as her accomplice. Albert Iverson would never have permitted his adolescent daughter to date a 20-year-old Navy man. She wasn't even allowed to wear makeup. Desperate to appear older, Rooney smuggled a pair of her mother's high heels out of the house to wear at a dance with her soldier boy. That April, James Wagner's ship set sail for Bermuda. From May to December, Rooney continued her trysts with Jimmy. "We used to go up to the site where he was stationed, and we used to meet him on the state pier without her parents knowing it," Faye remembered. Rooney, her cousin Margaret stated, was madly in love with Jimmy. He materialized again in 1942, at the end of her sophomore year, for a few days training in New London. That fall, they became secretly engaged. After half a year, Jimmy wrote with news that he was one of a few men chosen to be trained as Navy fighter pilots. James Wagner was sent back to the States to begin classes in March of 1943, and Rooney, who was then in her junior year, dropped out of high school about the same time. So it looked like she would rather get married. Rooney took a job, most likely as a riveter, for Electric Boat, a dockside company that built submarines. Jimmy, meantime, progressed through a series of Navy flight schools. On August 10, 1944, she and Jimmy Wagner eloped. She was several months past her 18th birthday, and he was 23. The wedding was in Pensacola, Florida, where Jimmy was completing advanced flight training. No one, including Jimmy's mother, with whom he was very close, seemed to anticipate this event. "It came as a shock right out of the blue," Catherine Wagner recalled. "We knew that he was going with a girl, and he seemed to think an awful lot of her and she of him." Catherine Wagner and her husband Harold were informed of the wedding by telegram. She remembered Jimmy saying, "Wish me luck, I just got married." Aside from the bride and groom, the only people present were Rooney's mother, Lorraine, a few Navy pilots. Was Anna pregnant? That, of course, was the obvious speculation. "I know she had a baby 9 months later," said her friend Faye. Anna knew, but never told anyone, not even her best friend Faye. Jimmy's parents and his 16-year-old brother Gene embraced his bride. Gene found Anna very neat, very pretty, and very nice. A lovely girl. Anna passed part of her pregnancy with her parents in Connecticut. Jimmy flew up to see her every opportunity he got, recalled his brother. They were very much in love, very happy. Then May 24th, 1945, Rooney gave birth to an 8-pound baby at 10:40 that night. Jimmy and Gene raced to the hospital in Brooklyn, driving all night. Anna Wagner chose the name Priscilla Ann for her love child. This was the first secret of the little girl who would marry Elvis Presley. She was not Priscilla Beaulieu. Her real name was Priscilla Ann Wagner. So that is the end of chapter 1, you guys. It's going to get very good, very juicy, very quickly, but this is really pivotal to know and understand where Priscilla came from, how her mother thought about the world and life and people, and how she raised Priscilla. And it seemed that everything that Anne believed she transferred to her daughter, and the most important thing, it seemed to Anne, was to be a guardian and a keeper of secrets. And we'll see as this book goes on that that is exactly how Priscilla, in my opinion, has lived her life, her entire life. So that is chapter 1, you guys. Thank you so much for joining me. Let me know down in the comments what you think about the chapter so far, and I can't wait to get into chapter 2 with you guys, and I will talk to you very, very soon. Bye.